Correspondent Janis Mackey Frayer joins us now from San Francisco. So, Janis, we certainly saw some positive steps on issues like restoring military communications and curbing fentanyl production. On the flip side, looks like there's still major disagreement on Taiwan. That's maybe not a huge surprise, but walk us through what did come out of yesterday's talks and what we're hearing from both sides.
Well, expectations going into the meeting were set quite low. U.S. officials were very good about communicating that in the days leading up to the summit. They confirmed the announcement on trying to curb fentanyl precursors flowing out of China into the U.S. via Mexico, and also the resumption of military-to-military confrontation. The thing is, that's low-hanging fruit in terms of what the diplomatic outcomes could have been. These are initiatives that had been in place. There were existing agreements that had been cut off in 2022 by China when Nancy Pelosi did that controversial visit to Taiwan. Taiwan still appears to be the most contentious issue between the two sides. You could tell in terms of the messaging in social media and in Chinese state media afterwards that the Chinese side was not content with what the U.S. was saying on Taiwan. They did get a commitment from President Biden that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, and there was the reiteration on the Chinese side that the U.S. would not interfere in what China sees as a domestic concern. At the same time that this was happening, there were reports from Taiwan's defense ministry that there were 10 military aircraft and 5 naval vessels that were operating near Taiwan. Military activity in the region has become normalized, and the defense ministry said that this is part of their normal training operation, but all of it suggesting that Taiwan very much remains the red line for China.
Janis, there was this controversial moment at the end of President Biden's press conference where he again called President Xi a dictator. What's been the reaction from Beijing, and were there any concerns that those comments could maybe harm any progress that had come of their discussion, their meeting?
Well, you'll remember last summer when President Biden made that comment at a private fundraiser, calling Xi Jinping a dictator. This happened literally within hours of Secretary of State Blinken finishing his visit to Beijing. At the time, President Biden didn't walk back the comments. How it came up again was in response to a question that was posed to President Biden at the press conference that he had after the meeting. Here's what he said.
He is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that's based on a form of government totally different than ours.
There hasn't been a lot of reaction on the Chinese side. There seems to be the sense that officially there is an effort underway to get U.S.-China relations back on track. When it came up at the regular briefing at China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when they were asked about it, it was brushed off in saying that people were trying to sabotage positive U.S.-China relations. Didn't name which people were trying to do that. But there does seem to be the sense officially in China that they are trying to make this reset in relations work.
Janis, after the meeting, we know President Xi addressed top U.S. business leaders and executives at a dinner there in San Francisco. What was his message to them?
Pandas. That was the message that came out of that dinner with business executives as well. Secretary Raimondo was in the crowd, and Governor Newsom. Xi Jinping was presented with some gifts, and he, in return, presented the news that there would be pandas returning to the San Diego Zoo, which will be well received here. He's also saying that China wants to extend an invitation to up to 50,000 American students over the next 5 years to come and study in China. The student numbers traditionally have been higher than what they are. 10 years ago, there were 15,000 students American students who were studying in China. Now there's about 300. So they are looking to increase what they call people-to-people exchanges as a sign that U.S.-China relations are back on track, cautiously, but back on track.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.